Whether you're transforming a neighborhood or the way a company does business, transformation usually demands two things: leadership and cooperation. Someone needs to carry the flag. Others need to be convinced to see the good of the whole as worth their investment of time and energy. As more and more company leaders look to the future and accept that digital transformation is necessary, the next question is, who exactly should lead it? This is the topic of this week's Future Proof with Inxeption CEO Farzad Dibachi.
So I've been in a lot of C-level meetings where I've had the CEO, the head of sales, and then the head of marketing, and then invariably the CIO, and maybe some other people in the room. And the discussion has been, hey, we were introduced to you through some board member or through some higher level executive, and we want to talk about being online. And so you sort of, each of these people have their persona and their attitude towards online business, right? So you have the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, being really only interested in the branding exercise of being online. So they've spent a lot of energy over the years worrying about what is their logo going to look like, what is the website going to look like, not that it's used for anything other than what it looks like. Then you have the Chief Revenue Officer, the head of sales, and he or she sits there, and when this discussion comes up is, hey, I've had, multi-generational relationship with my distributors and sellers. What are we talking about? We're not going to come in here and disintermediate these people who put us in business. We're not going to do anything like that. That's just not going to work. Then you have the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. Hey, I've got systems all in place that can do everything that you ever wants to do. And by the way, these systems have a moat around them. And I spend all of my energy to make sure that nobody comes in that's not actually authorized to come in. Sure as hell, I'm not going to start an online business and allow people to get in here. So it's fascinating because when we have these conversations, so the negative, and then you have the CEO, and the CEO sits there and is one of two ilks, right? One is, well, I've been on my job for several years. I'd like to keep it for several more years. I don't really care what happens after. The second ilk is, look, the universe is changing. If we don't change with it, we will become irrelevant. And there are so many examples of this all over the place. So there's no reason to do a Harvard Business Review on this. We already know this is happening. So somebody needs to take the initiative to do something. And hence the problem. There isn't really any of these people that can take the lead. So we at Inxeption, after I had several of these meetings, have a requirement that says we will not engage with the customer unless that customer has an actual product manager or project manager at a very high level assigned to this specific task, because otherwise we do not believe that it will go forward. Now, the funniest part in all of this is that we have one customer, $50 million a year business, where the CEO did exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. So he took the project on himself. And he actually set up the Inxeption platform. And what was weird about that is that, so there was no question about, oh, it's so hard, we don't want to use this, or is this going to be impossible? He was doing it. And he actually brought up the first e-commerce website for his business. And having come up and having solved all the issues that he needed to solve for it to come up, there was no conversation anymore. Now everybody all of a sudden was on his side to help him out. So if it is possible, and in most cases it is not, but if it is possible, you want the CEO involved as much as possible.
So, one thing that I've noticed is that when you take on transformation, you don't always know how it's hitting any of the key players in their career path. So you have described the sort of vision of the CEO, and they can kind of fall into two camps. But it seems also as if different aspects of digital transformation can threaten these other guys that are negative, right? And so if you don't have that CEO who is refereeing that match, You can get into even sabotage in some ways, right? I mean, you get an overweighting of concern about something that's actually low probability of happening. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, it's not only fair, it is common, it is the thing that happens. Because ultimately, in organizations, it's basically been the same way for literally hundreds of years, where you have a set of resources, and those resources get allocated to the individual and the parts of the organization that exist that day. It's a zero-sum game. So therefore, the next day, there's not going to be a lot more new resources coming in. It's the same resources. So you really are having this conversation that says, what parts of the resources that we're using today are we going to completely change to do this other thing? So therefore, it is very competitive and scary for a lot of people to have that conversation. I often tell people one of the reasons Silicon Valley has been successful, because the notion of a startup is that tomorrow there will be more resources. So the organizations in the Valley are not arguing about carving out the same pie. We're having a conversation that says, well, okay, tomorrow we're going to have 3 pies. Today we had 1. If we had 3 pies, who else can we give this pie to? And that changes the dynamics of the conversation, upside down.
Don't let managers jockeying for resources or turf derail your digital transformation. With C-level leadership, you'll be creating the resources you need to thrive. Thanks for listening to Future Proof. For more information, visit Inxeption.com.